Greetings, friends. Welcome to another episode of Into the Necrosphere. We are now up to number 106, and on this installment of the show, I am going to be talking to the infamous Mikael of Vredensdal. He was on the podcast about 30 or so episodes ago to talk about the Tyrant Shade. This week, we are talking about his new record, Silence is Eternal. I reviewed it on last week's episode of the podcast, so if you listened to that episode and you heard the track that I played, you will know that it is fucking badass. And well deserving of the track-by-track rundown we gave it on this conversation. So he did that. We spoke about a whole bunch of other stuff, and that is going to be coming your way in about 2 or 3 minutes' time. Also, straight after the conversation with Mikael, I'm going to be reviewing not one, not two, but 3 new releases. New music by Defod, Exodus, and Einer, Freiheit. And if you're a fan of the last mentioned group of lads, then get ready to be happy, because next week on the show I have got Nikita Comrade of Der Weg einer Freiheit as my guest. We spoke about the new record Nocturne, a whole bunch of other stuff. Really great guy. And if you hear this new record, if you haven't done so already, you'll understand why I reached out to Season of Mist to have him on the show. It is outstanding stuff, and he is an absolutely awesome guest. You can, of course, enjoy all of these things for free by hitting subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, be that YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever else. And you can also follow me on social media. So I am on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you really want to rep your public love and support for the podcast, then head over to Teespring and check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store for t-shirts, hoodies, and all sorts of other cool swag. One final thing, at the very end of this episode, I will be doing my usual news rant. Lots to talk about this week, so you can expect at least a half an hour of profanity-laced babble coming your way. But right now, I will shut my mouth and get this episode up and running. Welcome back to Into the Necrosphere, Mikael of Vredensdal. So the only interview I did where I didn't have booze handy because it was in the middle of the day was with Carl, and I must confess I was a bit nervous in that one because I'd had such a shitty experience with him years previously, and then also my dog is like the sweetest, most gentle angel on the face of the earth, but anytime a delivery van or anything like that pulls up, it's DEFCON 1. You know, she's ready to destroy anyone that's there. And I mean, we were about 2 minutes or 3 minutes into the interview, and off she goes.
I was watching it actually. Yeah, I was actually watching it last night. He's a really interesting person, and I think that's really cool that you were able to snag that on your show.
Oh, dude, I was so grateful that Katie got that set up for me. Because I mean, she doesn't have to do that. I know she's pretty guarded, I think, with who she lets interview him. I think in part because my experience of him both times, and as I said, the first time was an unmitigated disaster. My experience of him both times is that, he's definitely not somebody I think who suffers fools kindly, and he's not somebody who is. I think if you're going to come at him with the typical questions, the way that a lot of folks have in interviews, it's just not going to work, because he's not interested really in even talking about his own music as much. He's kind of, he's off in his own world. And that's kind of, I think the second time around when I interviewed him now, I really kind of got it. It's like, you kind of think sometimes it's an act, but it's not. I mean, this dude is the real deal when it comes to how passionately he believes in his art, but I think equally how passionate he is about, I think, going in whatever direction he wants to go, as far as his life is concerned, as far as everything is concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of, in my opinion, whether he connects with it or not, I think the satanic aspect in music is sort of self-centered at times, and it's without the bullshit that's most times what invades the creative aspect for most artists, especially when you hit a certain place in popularity or renown or whatnot. So
I would agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's able to sort of hold that is I think impressive and inspiring. You know what I mean? It shows, and it really makes his art more alive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I spoke about this on Mikael's podcast probably about 18 months or so ago, and we were talking about Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam, which is, in my opinion, one of the best black metal albums ever made. And I as I was talking to him, I thought back to an interview that Gall had done about, I think it might have been the infamous Manger interview with what does Gorgoth represent, and he takes the sip of the wine and he goes, Satan. And then I think the follow-up question is, what does Satan represent? And he goes, freedom.
Satan is everything.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, and it's like that whole comment that he made about freedom, I think that is reflected a lot in his art. And I do think it's understated in black metal how much of an influence that attitude or that approach has had. And I really do feel like he's been one of the real trailblazers as far as that's concerned, where he kind of, I think he almost in some ways, because of the way that he acts and the, almost example that he set, if you will, he's made it okay for a lot of bands to be black metal bands, but just totally color outside the lines and just do their own thing. And that's part of why black metal is such an exciting genre right now, is because there's such a wide variety of bands in the scene doing music that sounds distinctly different. But it's if you contrast that to death metal, maybe not death metal in 2021, but certainly like death metal in 2010, there was so many fucking bands that all sounded the same. Every single album was like blast, and then a bit of a breakdown, solo, blast. I mean, it's just dull, and I feel like black metal has forged its own path, and again, like I said, that's what makes it so interesting and so exciting to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think what's interesting, something that I've noticed, maybe it's not noticeable, but there is also a different demeanor between most Norwegian or Scandinavian individuals within the black metal scene. They're listeners before they speak. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I've sort of come to learn and like experience working with my record label, Screaming Skull Records, because they're based in Oslo. And so, having video chats with them, sort of talking with them. Whereas before, what people are used to here in America, being so open and just explaining everything, rather they'll take a second to listen first. And that's, I think that comes across differently sometimes. Maybe you make a joke and they don't laugh at it. It's not because they don't think it's funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, no, you're 100% right.
So
I was about to say, so now with Silence is Eternal, I mean, how's Screaming Skull Records feeling about you jumping on Zoom saying, "Where my money at, bitch?" It's like, superstar.
Yeah, you're funny. Yeah.
Dude, so much hype around this new album. It's awesome to see, because I was so into Tyrant Shade, and it was great talking to you and kind of really kind of getting a sense of who you were around that record. And then this album kind of came out, and it's just, as soon as it was released, it just seems to have mushroomed all over the socials. And I know you posted something about it on Facebook the other day about how you're surprised by how well it's doing. But I mean, it's like I said, for me personally, it's just awesome to see. I love it.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, the response was really good, and it did surprise me, especially considering my location, being a shitty band from the US, Wisconsin of all places. But I also do feel like I put this energy into this music for a reason. You know what I mean? Like I'm not here to say that it deserves what it has, but I feel accomplished and confident in my music enough now to see that sort of feedback, and of course I'm happy with it. You know what artist wouldn't be, right?
Well, dude, I like I said to you on when I messaged you, that was probably around sort of the second or third spin that I'd given the record.
Oh, nice.
And because we'd spoken about how we grew up with religion in our being very much a mainstay in our lives, and really authoritarian religion. The instant thought that came to mind when I listened to that first track was it reminded me of those videos that you and I most likely both saw, where it's about evil rock music, and you kind of see the decent, well-dressed Christian man coming up on screen and explaining about how I remember there was one video in particular where he talks about how music has moved on from Elvis Presley's hip swinging days and the Beatles making the girls go wild, and then they have this clip, and it's like all these bands, like you hear the guitar playing, you see guys on stage screaming, and all the shit that we love.
Yeah.
And in the back of your mind, it's like it's wrong for me to hear this, but I love it. And it was such a weird thing. Like it's very, very rare that I would experience that with any new music, but when that Cold Northern Hellscape track starts, like it's got the clean intro, when that first riff starts, that's exactly what pops into my mind. It's like Mikael has kind of found a way to take all that excitement about hearing the wrong music, quote unquote, for the first time, and he's bundled it up into a song. And like I said to you, and I truly mean this, that is the biggest compliment I can give you, because it sets the tone for the rest of the album, and then from there it's just off to the races. I mean, I'd love for us to do a kind of a track by track breakdown, but just curious on your response and your thoughts on what I just said to you now.
Okay. Yeah. The first thing I thought of was when somebody who, let's say you make them some food, like a dish, for example, and they taste it and they say it reminds me of my mother's cooking or my grandmother's cooking or something like that, something that's able to sort of transcend time. I think that's really, it's really powerful. And the fact that you're saying that means a lot to me, because that's exactly what I'm aiming for, is to connect with something that's more than just corpse paint and loud. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's more to it than that. There's less involved with who I am as much as who you are when you're hearing it, when you're experiencing that sound or whatever. So that I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, it definitely has that forbidden sound to it. But that's kind of, again, that's all of the best black metal, has a forbidden element to it. But like I said, this to me was really sort of beautifully fleshed out. But if I recall correctly, when we spoke previously about the Tyrant Shade, you'd already started work on this record, right?
Yeah. Most times, or at least the past couple times, I'm sort of always, I'm always playing the guitar. I'm always working on something. And so at that time, I think I had maybe one or two songs basically laid out. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And then that eventually kind of ballooned into the 7 that made it onto the record.
Yeah. I knew initially leaving the Tyrant Shade exactly what I was moving towards, because the Tyrant Shade for me was a way to sort of it's like process of elimination. I was able to take my inspiration from bands like Bathory, Or Noir, that sort of black and thrash, new wave of British heavy metal sort of side, and really expand on that, King Diamond and whatnot, things like that. And that's really important to me. And I feel like if I wasn't able to properly express my interests in those bands, even speed metal bands like Agent Steel, stuff like that, if I wasn't really able to show that side of me, I think I couldn't have been, I wouldn't feel like an authentic artist in that sense. So the Tyrant Shade, I was happy to get that out. And as soon as I was done with it, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, which is more focused black metal music, that sort of that forbidden feeling the first time you heard Satyricon, Nemesis Divina or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, wow, what is this? You know what I mean? So
Satiric with Nemesis Divina, the magic of that record is the first time you hear the sword clang on the opening track, and then this shit is serious.
Absolutely, yeah, for real. it is the apocalypse at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's a great record. It's posted the other day as well on Instagram about Battles in the North, and I've spoken to a couple of folks about that recently. But I've recently again I've redeveloped an appreciation for that album in its spontaneity. Its kind of single-mindedness and just the fucking violence that album can, just unleashes on you from the second it starts. And I think Luke from Heathen Deity said it best. It's like the formula is almost start, blast, stop. The next song. It's like that's basically how it works. But there's such a they pull it off in such an absolutely magnificent way. And so then you start off this record with a track called Cold Northern Hellscape, which kind of reminded me a little bit of Battles in the North. But like I said, let's do a bit of a track by track, because I know last time around we didn't get around to doing that. I was curious to get your thoughts on, some of the things you're talking about, some of the inspiration around how the song came together. So I'll turn the floor to you. I love the album cover as well, by the way.
Oh,
love it.
I searched low and high for something that I've really felt connected with the music, and I began to realize that there's always sort of a central figure in the art that I pick sort of naturally, and this one really captured the feeling of the feeling was connected to nature but also lost in yourself sort of type of thing, you know what I mean? So it's like a little bit of both. So anyway, how do you want to how would you like to
let's take it from the top. So let's talk a bit about Cold Northern Hellscape to start.
Cold Northern Hellscape to start. Basically the track is pretty much the short version explaining the lyrics is the cycle of the seasons, and sort of more focused here in Wisconsin, northeastern Wisconsin. I live in Green Bay, and the winter is of course well known over here, and sort of experiencing the seasons and living through them continually. It really plays this it's almost like a symphony in your mind type of thing. Let's say you're going through summer and you're looking forward to fall, and the relief that you feel when the heat goes away, and the sort of hominess or whatever you want to call it, when the leaves start to change colors, things like that. And so I try to express this feeling of change and development through the music. So that's why you kind of hear the beginning. It's just sort of like, welcome to how I feel. Wisconsin is, I guess. And so
those, out of curiosity, were those sounds that you put into the opening intro, was that recorded? Is that an actual recording, or is that did you just put in kind of effects or kind of stock sounds?
No, it's the nature recording, sort of like the outside, the crickets, the wind, or whatever. Thing. That's a natural recording. But there are some effects used if you listen closely, you can kind of hear like creatures or demons or animals or critters, whatnot. And those were put in. And then toward the end.
So you don't have demons or creatures cruising around the mean streets of Wisconsin.
Not presently, but actually, that's really funny. I thought of this really funny idea to put the whole get up on, with the mask and everything, and just sort of walk around town and have my wife film me interacting with strangers, and make like one of those Immortal style music videos out of it.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea, mate.
Yeah, I know, right? I actually got this song, the song that I'm working on. Not sure of the title yet for the fourth album, and it's sort of like a one of those old school songs where they're sort of like talking to you about somebody. It's hard to explain. Can't really give it away yet, but it's going to be awesome. And cool. It includes the whole goblin character and whatnot. Anyway.
So then moving on to Ice in My Heart, the second track.
First thing I have to say about that song is Immortal, and the Tyrant song. It was the initial inspiration. I should mention the Cold Northern Hellscape intro was inspired by the idea of the opening track on Taka, the album Stridenhus, and that first song with that just guitar. I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's like it's fresh. It feels icy, so I wanted to do that. Ice in my heart.
There was something about that opening intro as well that reminded me a little bit of Cobalt. And I know, we have touched on kind of your connection or your sort of passion for US black metal. And again, whenever I think of US black metal pioneers, Cobalt is, instantly a band that springs to mind. And partly, because of the connection that I have personally to their music. I mean, I absolutely love them. There was definitely, it wasn't in terms of sound, because it's very different to anything that they've done, but there was definitely in terms of feel. There's a warmth to US black metal that I don't necessarily always find is the case in, the Polish scene or, the French scene or whatever the case may be, which is no slight on those scenes. It's just more of kind of I guess I'm talking more to the character of the music,
right?
Than anything else. And I've always found that with US black metal. US black metal has that kind of, it sort of has like a heat to it. I don't know if you kind of feel what I'm driving at, but
yeah, and I think that's why I feel like that sort of character that you're mentioning is why 75% of the extreme metal world, especially those outside of the US, have difficulty accepting it as what it is, because it's the minority in that sense, because it sounds different, and so people can't understand it right away, or it's not true enough for them because of that specific characteristic. But there is definitely a change that I believe is happening, not necessarily a change for to match the European countries, but there's definitely more of an expression of understanding to what has been before, because there's that period, of course, with the US black metal bands like Judas Iscariot and whatnot around that time, Vaughn, etc. That those are the American pioneers and stuff like that, right? So to speak. And then there's this gray area where they just fell off the map, and there's like no well-known banner bearer for the American black metal, and sort of all of a sudden these other bands started to come in, like Uada and whatnot, and I'm not particularly a fan of them, but they sort of drew more attention, Wolves in the Throne Room and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And so nowadays I think that's sort of being thrown out the window because there's so many other bands coming out, like the one that you actually just recently interviewed, Necrosphere. I watched that interview as well.
Great band.
I was totally impressed by that album, and there's just all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork. I think they're also sort of tired of feeling under the foot of this whole, thing. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean, and I do think at least I've never subscribed to anything like that anyway, but I do think the pervasive attitudes are changing. And I mean, there's so much great talent in the US. It's obscene. You've got Tombs, you've got I mentioned Cobalt before, and you've got so many different like bands that are belong to the same genre but play a different flavor of the genre, you could say.
There's this interesting thing, actually. I was, of course, I'm going to look at the comments on the black metal promotion video for my album. And one guy mentioned, he said, there's no signature sound that the US has, like you listen to Norwegian black metal, Polish, Greek, or, French, English, all this stuff. And they sort of have this signature sound, like, or Germany even.
Yeah.
And the guy was like complaining that, the US doesn't have a signature sound. And there was one guy on there who was like, well, that makes sense, because, the US is so, it's a large country, and it's almost like having 50 countries, European sized countries within, whatever. And so it would be difficult to have a signature sound. Well, I thought about that a lot, actually, before anybody really mentioned it. And this is my opinion on it. And the opinion that I have is, a lot of these European countries, actually all of them, I should say, have their own specific culture. For example, like Norway has Norwegian folk music.
Yeah.
There's German folk music. It's stuff like that. People grow up with that. It's part of their DNA. They hear it. It's their default, and their grandpas and grandmas have told them about that. But the U.S. doesn't have a starting point as far as what their culture is. It sort of began with a variety of people, right? So there is no necessary folk music, and I believe the reason that we don't have a signature sound also is based on the fact that we didn't grow up with a historic culture, if that makes sense.
Or at least a culture that kind of goes back to ancient times.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
yeah,
exactly.
You're by all accounts, America is a reasonably, or relatively speaking, a young country.
Right, exactly, and that's just my opinion on that. I think that it has to do with that.
I think you make a very good point. I think also one of the other things I think is very is very prominent and probably helps dictate some of that difference. There's a very, especially in Norway and in certain parts of Scandinavia, there's a very close connection to the heritage within the country. And really, it's not frowned upon to have that close connection to the heritage within that country. I find in the States, in particular, the UK, you're also starting to have some, folks on the fringes of the woke society, frowning at bands like Winterfelleth for singing about their heritage, which I just find to be obscene. I mean, I've spoken to Russ from Winterfelleth, and I mean, he couldn't be the furthest thing from a fucking Nazi. But anyway,
right, yeah.
But in Norway, that kind of thing is almost celebrated. Whereas if you started singing exclusively about American heritage, the first thing that would happen is you'd start appearing on lists.
Yeah,
it's like, absolutely. Watch out for Mikael from Vredensdal.
Well, see, and that's the thing, is that it's not so black and white, or to put it plainly. And I think it's healthy to have pride in where you come from, but there's no reason to make a political party about it. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, no, I completely agree. And again, I mean, I'm still of the opinion, and I mean, I know on the news rant section of this podcast, I'll let rip about a bunch of stuff, but that's sort of for my own amusement more than anything else. It's my own outlet. But I do think when it comes to music, broadly speaking, I contend to that I don't believe that politics should have any place in it. I mean, I know there's political bands, and some of those bands are great. I like them, but I don't want the conversation to be overtly political, because I believe that art is what connects people more so than anything else. If I think about almost all of my friends, all my best and closest friendships were formed over mostly music, to a lesser degree film. So if that then starts to become divisive, and we have to choose which side of the fence we sit on, and if I wear a Burzum t-shirt, then Michael's never speaking to me ever again. I mean, that's just I don't know where society heads to after that.
Yeah. It's sort of annoying what's going on. It's like, how do you look at a painting that's just an expression of a feeling, and say that this particular color offends me because it's a color that reminds me of something that's considered negative. It's like,
yeah,
as soon as you can play great riffs and have a badass drummer or whatever, but as soon as you start throwing your opinion in there, you're bombarding the listener with it's almost like you're trying to convert them to what you think, and it's like then it takes away the art. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I'm more of a believer of, I've always gravitated in any case towards this sort of thing, but I like lyrics that are relatively ambiguously written, and I can impose my own ideas on it.
Exactly.
I can impose my own meaning on it. Like the connection, I think, is far deeper when you can personalize what the person's singing and kind of make that relevant to you. There are rare exceptions. I mean, I don't have a deep connection to the lyrics on the first Deicide album, but I fucking love that record.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. No, I totally get that.
So there definitely are exceptions. But then when I think of some of my favorite stuff ever, like Exuvia by Ruins of Everest, for example. I mean, everything there is super ambiguous in terms of the writing of the record, but that record feels like this. Every time I listen to it, it's this intensely personal journey. As you listen through the record, and it's that much more effective and that much more stunning for it.
Yeah. So like speaking of the song "Ice in My Heart," it's basically it's that feeling that you get when you have to be cold. Like there's times in your life that you have to deal with that, and some of the lyrics sort of go over the idea that you're, it says weapon against the self. You know what I mean? It's like you're in a battle, but sometimes you have to be that way. And then of course I have to add a little, if you look at the lyrics toward the end, I added a little immortal reference, and it says 20 below, like talking about the temperature it gets around here. And then it says tragedies blow. So it's like tragedies blow on the horizon, right? So totally immortal there, and no flame can touch the ice of my heart, meaning I need this strength. Sometimes you have to be, sometimes you have to be more than what's comfortable to succeed. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, to harm, but it's just how life goes.
Yeah, there are things demanded of you over the course of your. Are you you just turn the camera off? You're not going to be naked when you come back on, are you?
In your dreams.
You're like, ta-da, dick pic.
Oh my god. I'm not even gonna go there.
I never had that on the podcast. Yeah, there are times in your life when it will be expected of you, where life will require you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. But it would be towards maybe an existential end. Maybe it's to preserve the life of your family. Maybe it's to preserve the life to preserve your own life. And in order to be able to do that, you are going to have to suppress all of your human instincts. In some cases, your human instincts for empathy, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Right. Yeah. It's just sort of accepting what sometimes it has to be done. Like it is what it is. You're not intending to harm something, but everybody has a side of them that whether you've unlocked it or just touched on it is a healthy darkness. And so ice in my heart is saying I know it's there and I battle with it, but sometimes you have to let it out. Sometimes you have to suppress it. And it's just a song open to interpretation, just like you were talking about. It's so generic, but at the same time, it's clear. It's like, it is what it is. So the next song is actually Freiheit, which is in Norwegian. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but each album so far that I've done features one track in Norwegian. It means roughly born in a grave. And that one is just, it basically talks about struggle in general. So it's sort of like, imagine being born at the bottom. Like you just, you awake in a shithole, and that's your life. And that's sort of the gist of it. And that's the next song. So the next song, Misanthropy, is a combination of the word prophecy and misanthropy. And that is a very Darkthrone inspired song. A lot of stuff is Darkthrone inspired. I couldn't be more open about my Darkthrone obsession.
Oh, no shit, with the t-shirt you're wearing.
Oh yeah, I got the t-shirt on. This is the.
What did you think of Eternal Hails, by the way?
At first I was sort of because you're always wanting to hear a band at their clearest sounding, at this point, blah blah blah. And at first I was kind of on the fence about it, but as I listened to it more and more, stared at the art, I just began to love it. I don't think that you would need a Solar guitar to play lo-fi riffs like that. He's Ted or Nocturno Culto or whatever, with his new Solar guitar, I think it's cool. I'm not really into the Solar thing, but he could have played that same thing on a different, especially if he was gonna mix it and master it so down to the ground like that.
Yeah.
But the riffs are awesome. The art is amazing.
The mixing was what was first befuddled me, because they made this big deal about the fact that they were going to a studio and it was, wasn't going to be as raw as the recording wasn't going to be as raw as some of their other stuff. And then you get it, and it sounds to me like it was mastered for VHS cassette. It doesn't sound like it was mastered for 48 hertz or whatever a master file is mastered at. It's very disarming or disorientating when you hear it for the first time, because like if I put it on my hi-fi over here, it sounds fucking atrocious. I mean, it truly does. Exactly. It sounds abysmal.
Yeah.
So and my setup is relatively kind to shit sounding recordings too. So that's saying something. If you saw my review, I didn't like the record when it first came out. I've since warmed to some of the songs. Like I feel the third track, "Wake of the Awakened," that to me is really the record at its best. But I am of the school, and I know I'm in the minority because most people are. The first three records are their records. For me, it's Hate Them and Plague Wielder. That to me is Dark Throne at their absolute peak.
I mean, I love Plague Wielder. I'm all about the late 90s, early 2000s Dark Throne, Total Death, Ravishing Grimness. Yeah. Those are way up there for me. As far as the new album goes, I think that one thing that it definitely does is once you're into it, then nothing else sounds like it, especially coming from somebody who's so high profile now.
Yeah.
So that they sort of won with it drew the attention to the record, in my opinion, that way. And then of course, they're all about the nostalgia, the staying true to your inspiration and staying true to metal just in general. And that's I think that shows more than anything that they just stuck to their guns. Maybe the whole thing about going to a big studio was a prank, or maybe not, or maybe they just decided last minute, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want. And that's sort of like the Dark Throne style. They just do what they want. Kind of like golf, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's like, I get it. In the end, I get it. I wouldn't buy a Solar guitar, but I get it.
do that first track on Hate Them. I think it's Rust. A couple of years ago, it's around this time of year, actually, my friend got home from work and he walked into his house. And long story short, went up the stairs, heard shuffling around upstairs, but he'd had some building work done at his house, so he thought that it was some of the builders that were still there. Heard some shuffling around downstairs, and then suddenly somebody grabbed him by the shirt, kind of pushed him out of the way, and these guys, ran out of his house. And I think actually he pushed them away. Sorry, and he ran out of the house, and they were in there, and then they kind of fled after that. And I said to him, imagine if you knew they were there, imagine how fucking terrified they would be if you walked into the house very calmly, turned your hi-fi on, played that first track on Hate Them, and if you had like a power tool there, like a drill or a chainsaw, you just like you play that super loud, and when that bass comes in, like boom,
you
just go
you're like, that'd be awesome.
I'm coming up.
Yeah, it sounds like perfect horror film. I love that idea. Actually, that's great.
Yeah, just as a side note, but I just going back to the Norwegian track, so the reference that pops into my mind there was the Shadow Throne, and I know you mentioned Satyricon earlier.
I'm sorry, who?
The Shadow Throne. So
Shadow Throne?
The second Satyricon album.
Oh yeah.
So it was like Shadow Throne or maybe Dark Medieval Times, but there was definitely like I don't know whether it was the Norwegian that made me think that, but I definitely kind of got that vibe from that song.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to always pinpoint certain songs from the bands. I'm hugely inspired by Satyricon, but yeah, there's definitely a different essence that I felt. I always try to put the Norwegian lyrics on something that I feel fits it, and like honors it in a sense without sounding too stupid. But yeah, I don't know. I tried to do something a little bit more open and melodic, and it really fills. I feel like the sound was full with that sort of open riffing style, and maybe it's just how it came out, and I just felt that it matched. So maybe that's what you're hearing.
Yeah, possibly. Speaking of open and melodic, have you been following Telok from AM? This I write an album in 30 days series he's doing on his YouTube channel.
I've seen that like pop up on YouTube and whatnot, and maybe I spent like 2 to 5 minutes on it, but I don't really look at that.
I mean, I don't have time to watch the full 3 hour 41-minute video that he's posting. However, he did something where I think he just pulled together like a short video of them playing Alcatraz Festival and going like on a short tour, and he had one of the riffs that he had written in these sessions, kind of, you know, playing in the background as kind of the theme music. Oh my God. I mean, I know he says that's for like a solo project, but fuck me. If I were Necro Butcher, that's where I'd make an executive decision and I'd say, it's not for a solo. That's a Mayhem song, because it's nice. so good. And you kind of like listening to that and you know, mentioning that randomly, but listening to that, you understand how good that dude is, that he can literally just, you know, as kind of a fuck around project on YouTube, he comes up with something like that. And like I was sitting there thinking about it, it's like, I know so many people that would spend so many hours of their lives writing riffs and you know, trying to piece together songs, and they would never do what that guy's just done in 2 minutes. And it's like,
yep, you're totally right.
which is nice. By the way, when it comes to like the old school bands, I've said it so many times on the podcast, but for me, Mayhem remain the standard bearers. I thought Demon was masterful. I love Esoteric Warfare. I love Ordo at KO. It's just, and live to me as well, they are the band. Like when I think of black metal and everything I love about black metal, that's wrapped up in one band, and that's Mayhem.
Fair enough.
All right, so let's move on then. So the next track after Misanth Prophecy, The Slave to Unholy Logic.
Yeah, okay, so I spoke to one guy actually, and he said the lyrics to him reminded him almost of like a monologue, because if you look at it, it's not necessarily, doesn't really rhyme, and it doesn't really have a rhythm to it, but the track itself is very fast and sort of chaotic, and it's, I don't know, I guess it sort of fits into the whole idea of sort of maybe trying to break that little bit of the fourth wall and get into your head a little bit more, and just sort of trying to see, you know, where your logic is at, you know, with daily interaction. You know, what is your life made up out of? What are you a slave to? You know what I mean? And so that's sort of what it's about. My favorite part on that song is the I can't even, I don't know what to call it, but toward the end there's like a key change or something like that with one of the riffs, and it's just really cool. Yeah. And
interesting, the kind of modern slavery theme. Did you see this? You've no doubt seen it. This name change that Facebook is undertaking from being Facebook to being Meta, and then they have this really weird, like as part of their intro video to all of this, Zuckerberg did this really, really weird, like almost Black Mirror type recreation, and he's doing it completely unironically. Like this is going to be great. You know, we're all going to be these cartoon avatars in this virtual world where we all live, and it's like, you could create your space as beautifully as you want. And I was like, can you imagine what's going to happen to the human race if they get even deeper into the shit? I mean, you know, I know we all use social media, and you and I met thanks to social media. But I mean, like, dude, have you not done enough damage?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're totally right. It's just like what was once a tool is now a weapon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
it's the weapon and the drug. It's like the
yeah,
first.
definitely, absolutely.
It's like crack that you could turn into a lightsaber.
Yeah, I know, for reals. It's wild. It's like I don't know. There's so many things involved with political statements and like especially American politics that involve social media and like the whole influencer bullshit that really just pisses me off. And it's like, I don't know, like to be an influencer is to guide somebody else's mentality, whereas to be inspired is to choose, accept that you can connect with it. Whereas, does that make sense?
Yeah.
People out there
what confuses me is you're not inspired by the many augmented ladies saying, just get after it, having an ugly day, but don't worry, I'll get better soon because I'm worth it.
Yeah, like what is that bullshit that is just constant? Anybody could do that, but not anybody could be. I don't know. Not even.
But can you imagine again, like what's? I often look at that and I go, okay, well, it's all well and good that this is your life right now, and like you see clearly the lifestyle that you represent is you cruise around and in your car all day and sit on the beach and go to this tanning bed and get liposuction. When you're in your 40s, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, for real,
it's like there comes a time when the looks fade, and I must confess, and I don't mean this to hate on anybody, but there's two things that happen. Like there's a specific thing that happens to a woman when she grows old. There's a specific thing that happens to a lot of men that I've seen that grow old, and either of them amount to the same level of pathetic. With men, guys that are, were physically strong or that had some degree of alphaness as they were growing up or as they were in their 20s or in their 30s, when they hit their late 40s and their late 50s, they still want to feel like they're the alpha of the pack.
Right.
And they start to also feel intimidated by the young bloods coming up. And the men that are, because I still believe there's something primitive about our makeup that where things like physical size, physical presence, that sort of thing makes a huge difference. And I think, again, it comes back to with what we were saying about social media. It'd be a lot less shit talking if you were face to face with somebody than there is now. But yeah, so as these guys get to that age, they really struggle to come to grips with the fact that they're aging and that they're not going to be the leader of the pack anymore. With women, it's kind of the same thing in a different sense. Women who are very beautiful, when they get to a point when they're in their early 40s, mid 40s, and the looks begin to fade, there's this desperate like clinging to that validation that they used to get,
right?
And it's like I'm trying to think of like I've got like a film image in my mind of this old drunk woman with badly applied makeup who's still flirting with the bartender. It's kind of like that.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know how we got down there. I don't know how I got down that random route.
It's part of society now. It's going to come out eventually, right? I guess.
Yeah. We were talking about the influencers, but then then the future trajectory of the youth is equally scary, because I saw a thing a while back where they were saying they'd polled, I don't know how many thousands of teenagers in the US and in the UK, and a load of teenagers in China. And the average teenager in China wants to be an astronaut when they grow up. Wow. The average teenager in the UK and the US would love to be a YouTube influencer, or YouTube or Instagram influencer, if only they were given the opportunity. That to me was the most telling thing about it. It's like, so this is so pathetic now that not only do you think that it's, that's an aspirational thing to want to be, as a social media influencer, but you believe that it's based on who gives you an opportunity.
It's ridiculous.
Not really. It's based on how much flesh you're willing to show.
I mean, and you see why everybody gets so offended over everything nowadays, is because they're waiting for somebody to give them the opportunity to be offended about it rather than just having an opinion, making a decision. It just feels
it's
like
a way for them to mainline that validation. Like if you go post a thing on Instagram, which I'm sure you're planning to do straight after this interview, like, oh, I can't believe I just spoke to Jackie Smith and Into the Necrosphere, the things he said about women.
Oh,
it's like, and then people are like liking it. It's like, oh, you shouldn't have given him the opportunity. He doesn't deserve you. But you know what I mean, though. It's like, it's always that thing. It's like when someone feigns outrage, then everybody, like all the idiots come piling on, like, oh, we'll feel so sorry for you. If you want to talk. It's the same as like I joked with Evan from Quell about this on the episode that he was on recently. The porn stars that post like these selfies where they in full makeup, they look fantastic. They're like having an ugly day.
Yeah.
And the guy,
like, come on.
These idiots from all over the world post, hope you're feeling okay, hun. I'm here for you. It's just different ways to mainline the validation. It's like, if you're a dude with a six pack, then you post it, you post these photos of yourself training. It's like, up early, gonna go after it.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God. It's come to a point where people are bored with, original living, you know what I mean? They're bored, yes. And so they're just going, well, here's the next best thing, and that's the same thing with the. I didn't actually. I've never heard of that meta thing that you mentioned before. So,
oh, dude,
yeah. So
make sure you watch the video. It's fucking atrocious. I mean, it's like parody. So imagine if somebody 5 years ago wanted to do a parody of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, they would have come up with a meta video that he did.
Yeah. So, wow.
Anyway, right, so let's move on then song wise. So Slave to Unholy Logic. What is the next track? Forest of Light.
Yeah, Forest of Light. That was a Brazoom inspired track. I very much enjoy the post prison albums, Bellis and
I was just about to say, watch what you say now, because you can get cancelled.
Yeah.
At any moment.
Well, okay, sorry about that.
So you at least credit him after his rehabilitation.
What I'm trying to say is musically, the art was interesting enough for me to come back and listen again, and I think that there are some unique ideas displayed. So I'm
unashamedly a fan of his music. I don't agree with this, with the vast majority of what he's said, but in terms of his music, as I said, I'm unashamedly a fan, in as much as I think that Roman Polanski is a scumbag, but I'm not going to not ever watch Chinatown or Rosemary's Baby ever again. Those are phenomenal films. Dunkelheit to me is definitive black metal. If you want to make a top 20, a playlist with the top 20 most definitive black metal songs, Dunkelheit has to be on there.
Yeah, I really think that plenty of people are out there don't like it, and that's fine. But if you don't like it, then just stay out of black metal. If you have a problem with yourself, then just get the fuck out of here, because nobody wants you. Nobody wants you here.
Yeah.
I don't. And I'm tired of hearing about people complain about it. It's part of the history now, and so if you want to consider yourself a member of this lifestyle, then you have to accept that history, and that's how it goes with that. That's how it goes. So that's just.
No, I agree, and it's also you would undoubtedly have felt the same as I did about this. The thing I could never get when I was as I was growing up in the church, because I see a lot of parallels between this crazy nonsense that we're kind of referring to right now, and the cult-like behavior in church. I could never get, if you are so steadfast in your beliefs and in your faith, why are you so afraid of anything that is contradicts it or is critical of it? And I kind of feel like that's, to me, a good example with this debate around whether you like the art or whether you like the artist.
Right.
I can watch a film about a serial killer without wanting to pick up a chainsaw and start mowing people down myself.
It's a trend to like murder mysteries. That's
exactly. and I can listen to a song sung by somebody whose personal views I strongly disagree with, and still appreciate the music.
Right.
I mean, unless it's some overt, Nazi overture. I mean, that's totally different. But when you hear the lyrics to Dunkelheit, there's nothing Nazi about that whatsoever. The guy's singing weird, very ambiguous Tolkien-inspired lyrics. And as you say, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's part of it's woven into the culture of the scene. And if you don't like that, then maybe the scene is not for you.
Maybe it's not for you. Why are you here wasting your time? It's like, you're wasting my time at this point. So anyway, the track, it just sort of plays with a few different ideas that I felt were pretty transition from early 90s black metal to late 90s, early 2000s, that sort of transitioning point where it was it went from like the Hellhammer Bathory style thrash black metal riff to more open melodic sort of like we talked about Dark Throne and even the early Taka albums. So and the lyrics on this song was a little bit different for me because it came from more of a place of sorrow, sort of like just accepting defeat, but it's less of giving up, more of like I don't know, it's just like depression in general, and that I wanted to do something like that because nowadays with all the subgenres, there's depressive black metal, and that's fine that people want to really chop it up and put it into boxes, but I really think that black metal as a whole should just sort of have these many legs within its, or many branches within itself. It doesn't have to be considered depressive black metal. It doesn't have to be considered melodic black metal. If it really encompasses what black metal should be, then it's going to have multifaceted, you know what I mean? Like
it comes back to what we said right at the start of the conversation about freedom.
Absolutely.
One of the principles that it should be expounding is freedom. So the musically there is freedom as well. I mean, I believe Goldsverd, for example, is at its heart that Ghosts Invited record and the EP, both at their heart are black metal albums. But I mean, they don't sound like Dark Throne.
No, absolutely not.
But the core of it's black metal for sure.
Yeah.
And as we've just said, it's about having the freedom to be able to do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Right. Exactly. I just don't think you need so many names for it. You know what I mean? It doesn't. That's just my opinion. Like atmospheric stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah. And then you save kind of the best for last on this record. Like you bookend the record, in my view, with the two best tracks, and the very best being the title track, Silence is Eternal, which is long, epic, dark, really brooding, and just a perfect way to end off the album.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I thought about that a lot, and I was trying to figure out, am I writing like The Tyrant Shade, for example? Am I writing a compilation album of good songs, or am I writing an album? You know what I mean? Like, am I creating an album? Am I telling a story without being a concept, or without having a concept? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wanted to do, and so I really appreciate that. A lot of the music that I listened to as a kid growing up, I always felt that they left the best song, or the most interesting song, as the last one, and I feel like that's, I don't know, I haven't heard a lot of albums that have that lately. There's not a lot of albums that sort of build into the grand finale so much as like you said, Battles in the North is just sort of go blast next song, stop, and then you're like, oh yeah, that album was awesome, those riffs were great, and it blasted me all the way through or whatever. But sometimes it's sort of linear, where this is supposed to be sort of, I don't know. Does that make
peaks
sense?
and valleys. Yeah, I know exactly.
So
I'll differ with you with Battles in the North, because it ends with Blashka, which has a genius like keyboard piece at the end. I mean, that's masterful. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's a lot of records that are great, but the flow of the album is very monotone. It's like one bruiser after the next.
Right. So that's all I was trying to do. I'm not trying to specify that my style is any other way. I just wanted to do something that I thought would be fulfilling to me and maybe interesting to others. So yeah, Silence is Eternal just sort of sums up the album, I guess. It takes the feeling that I was going for, which is a more focused black metal attack, I guess you could say, with some more melody, more emotion. Really, it actually has more emotion than the Tyrant Shade. The Tyrant Shade was pretty just angry. It's pretty just animalistic, but this one is more. It's more like. It's like when that person who just flies off the handle easily and yells, and then there's the other person who's pissed off but they're quiet, and you're more afraid of that person. You know what I mean?
It's definitely a more emotive record than the Tyrant Shade. I mean, the Tyrant Shade is very overtly as many records are, a love letter to its influences,
right?
Which is great. It makes for great songs. But this to me is really the record where you have come into your own. I think I feel like you've taken so much of what you've picked up from doing the first two records, and you have perfected your approach and the way that you want to express yourself now musically. Like you've really found your voice.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I do feel that way as well. And I've already started coming up with riffs for the next album. And I feel like they're even, they expand more on the emotional side. I wouldn't, it's not necessarily emotional music, so to speak, but when it should come across as multi-layered, I guess you should say, rather than having one. So pretty much just that little last part there at the end sums it all up. It just says, where feeling does not exist, where all intentions are infernal, where control does not exist, where all afflictions are internal, where chaos reigns supreme, it's where silence is eternal. And that's just, it's that place where, it's that moment to yourself, where you're accepting your life. And sometimes when, sometimes you hate where you are, sometimes you love where you are, but no matter what, there's always that place that reminds you of everything, good or bad. You know what I mean? Like that sort of connects the human, the humanity in us all, is that we all hate something about ourselves, and we've all have these familiar feelings that can sort of, I don't know. Does that make sense? It's the place.
Yeah, no, it does.
Before and after everything. That's sort of what I was going for.
It's that liberating point where that liberating moment or feeling or place that you get to mentally, where you're completely centered on exactly what's now, what's around you, what do you have in terms of good and bad in your life, whether it's you're healthy, you got a roof over your head, but maybe you've broken up with your wife, or whatever the case may be. It's that liberated feeling that you have when you kind of go, this is the baseline, everything that I get beyond this is just a plus. Yeah, which I'm speaking to personal experience there, which I have felt. And one of the best feelings of my entire life, because it helped me through just about everything that came, after that, because when you kind of finally make peace with how with everything, and you kind of go, if I strip every single thing back and all I have is just what I have right now, then everything is fine. I can cope with and make it through, whatever life throws at me.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, it's just, it's part of our existence, and you can either choose to accept it and become the person that you want to be, or you take advice from an influencer. That's just really that's how it is nowadays. And so anyway, I just wanted to make a multi-layered album that can connect hopefully to people in their own way. The lyrics mean, of course, much more personal things to me regarding events that happened in my life and what I experienced to get here and how I wrote the music. But in the end, the lyrics should be fairly clear, and the music itself obviously is, like you said, a show of my inspiration. I really think that the fourth album is going to be bigger than this one, just because like you said, I feel that I found that place. So I'm really excited, and of course I'm very appreciative that you want to talk to me and all the nice things that you said about the music and stuff.
Well, dude, I really do hope, and I said this on a podcast a little way back. One of the things that I've always set out to do with this podcast, it's giving back to the scene that I love so much. Whether that's death metal, black metal, and I've had a couple of folks that are not in that scene on the show as well. There's also a method to that. If I get somebody big on like a, Donald Tardy or Johnny Kelly, then it means that I build up a greater degree of exposure to the podcast. And then if somebody comes back to listen to another episode in the future, then they discover Vredensdal, or they discover Quell, or they discover Trivax, and that I've seen that happen. And that to me is kind of the main purpose of the podcast. It's an opportunity, one, to talk to people, and I've been fortunate enough that I've befriended the folks, over the course of this. So now it's kind of become like a way that I keep in touch with friends as well. But talk to interesting people, have the type of conversations that I always wanted to hear, listening to, metal podcasts and metal interviews and things like that. But then also hopefully give bands who deserve it the rub. And if I had my own record label, as I said, I know of at least 10 bands that I would sign straight away. That have all sent me demos of putting out phenomenal music. But I was going to ask you actually, as you have now found your voice, would you ever consider getting together a band of devil worshippers and taking this to the stage?
Yeah. Well, no, never.
Your music would suit. I mean, more so than obviously there's some one man black metal projects you can it's like this would never work on an album. Oh, sorry, not an album, on a live setting.
Yeah.
With you, it's very different though. I can hear some of these songs live, and it would sound fucking great.
Yeah, I thought of that, and I write it that way. I want it to feel like you're there, to have that energy. But my drummer lives in Washington State, and we make music in that sense, where I write it, I send it, and he records the drums and he sends it back to me, and we sort of collaborate that way. I don't believe that Vredensdal will ever be a live band. I think that it would take away from what it is, and as much as I do agree that it would sound great live, I don't want to give that much, because my focus is writing the music, is becoming the music, and then as soon as I go live, I feel, in my opinion, it wouldn't be mine anymore. And so my best chance at creating something that I feel is the truest essence of what Vredensdal is, what the goblin represents, has to be in my fortress of solitude.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Really, actually, there's one thing I wanted to say is that there's so many people that are so focused on what is and what isn't black metal music and all this stuff. And the thing is that I really listen to a lot of music, not just black metal. I listen to all kinds of metal. I'm inspired by a lot of different genres, and just because it's not in the music doesn't mean that the inspiration isn't there. Like with the transitions and the chord progressions, and there's too many ideas, or not ideas. There's too many I think pushes on this thing that it has to be, I'm a murderer or you're a weakling. It's like that's not how it goes for me. There's so much more involved, and I just wanted to say that, make sure people understand that it's black metal music, and it's really black metal music, but You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I would assume most people that listen to this podcast know that, I mean, I've spoken about hip hop that I like on this show before, and I think generally speaking, those days of, like in the old school days where, you were a thrash kid or you were a hardcore kid, and if you turned up at the thrash show, you got fucked up.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Those days are over. And personally, I'm 41 years old, man. I'll listen to whatever I want. So
Yeah.
it's some of it people are going to like, some of it they won't. So
I'm a metalhead. Yeah, definitely. I'm a metalhead through and through. It's what I listen to the majority of the time. And I love the music. I love the scene. Some of the people. But it's important to be who you are, and look at, even Fenris, for example, he likes house music and 70s progressive rock and stuff like that. And it's so cool because it's obvious that the rhythm, it shows in his drumming, it shows. And that's something that I hope to communicate to other people.
Yeah.
And then the final touch of this album is the new wave of USBM little tag there. And I really wanted to make sure and say that that's not just for me. That's just the idea for everyone. That tag sort of came up through a follower or a fan or whatever you want to call it in the early days when I first made the demo, and they're like, "This is like, oh, blah blah." They said some crap about that shitty demo, and I thought to myself, it's I don't own that saying, but there are so many people now coming out and being more, they're sticking their neck out more for the music rather than just saying, I'm black metal, I'm so lo-fi, corpse paint, you don't know who I am, Mr. Mysterious.
Yeah.
I'm just like, let that go, be yourself musically, and if musically you're not an extreme metal musician, then don't try to be one. But at the same time, if you feel it and it's there, express it fully. Use more than just what this blast beat and this style riff. Just express everything, whatever it is. And if it's
again, I think people will respond better to music that they believe to be an honest expression or an honest expression of the artist's creativity.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It's a bit like playing sport. I heard a great saying once. I can't remember who it was that said it on a podcast. He was like, you may love a sport, but the sport doesn't love you back. It's kind of like that with music. I think you may love a style of music. I like I do like old school, like 90s, very simple street level hip hop. I can tell you right now, if I try to make it myself, sound fucking atrocious.
But you connect with it somehow, so it's part of
no, exactly. And you also, I think one thing that gets lost sometimes in that conversation is people misunderstand what people connect with. You connect with different things when it comes to different types of music. I'm pretty confident that Fenris doesn't connect with the 2-word lyrics that get used in the house music. There's something else about it that he connects with, whether it's the rhythm or whether it's the bass or whatever the case may be. But that again, in turn, feeds whatever creativity he has to make the music that he makes. And so, it's all good.
Yeah. I think that's probably what helped him, or, his being real is what solidified the importance of their sound, just like we talked about with Gall.
Yeah, no, I agree. Right, young man. Thank you very much for your time. Awesome catching up with you again. And like I said, I'm stoked for you on this album because I'm glad that more people are recognizing the talent that's on the show. Yeah, to me, this record is sensational. And as I said, tip my hat to you, and I'm really looking forward to the fourth one. Thank you. I appreciate it. Cool. All right, dude. We'll catch up again at some point in the not too distant future when that fourth album comes out. Sure. But either way, take care of yourself. I'll speak to you soon. You as well. All right, my man. Bye-bye. Cold Northern Hellscape by Vredensdal off the record Silence is Eternal. It's available right now on Screaming Skull Records. Head over to Bandcamp and check it out. And if you buy yourself something, let Michael know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Great to see Michael again. Great to see him in good spirits and have him on the show. And hopefully we will have him back on when album number 5 gets dropped, which by the sounds of things isn't far off. But speaking about new music, let's talk now about Defod and the Lengthening Shadow, which was released on November 15th by Cavernous Records. Defod, of course, for long-time acolytes of the Into the Necrosphere podcast, were featured on my illustrious Demo of the Week segment back in February, I believe, after Raz Casket, the man behind the music, had put out the fantastic demo, Kerrig Hinnefall. I am very, very pleased to announce that not only is The Lengthening Shadow the first record that Defod has put out on an actual label, but it is musically a big, big step up from the demo. I think the demo had a lot of promise. Certainly a demo or a collection of songs that wore its influences very, very loudly on its sleeve. The Lengthening Shadow does the same thing in terms of, the fact that pretty much from start to finish, you know that young Raz spent an awful amount of time listening to Satyricon, Burzum, Emperor, and various other stalwarts in the scene. But what I think makes The Lengthening Shadow so special is, number one, there is a far more experimental vein to a lot of these songs. As much as it harkens back to those bands that I mentioned before, Raz is a lot more willing to try different stuff, whether it be with riffs, adding in ambient sections, adding in these kind of lengthy atmospheric breaks. It's really well produced. I think the stuff that he does with his voice is super interesting. Across a lot of the records, there's a song called probably one of the high points of the record, Ceremony of the Seven Stars, which is kind of just all over the place, but it is in its glorious chaos. There is method, and it ends up sounding absolutely fantastic. But yeah, start to finish, I love this record. And if I had to liken it to any one thing, and maybe you'll agree with me when you hear the track that I'm about to play, if you listened to the re-recording of the old Burzum records that Varg did, he did a re-recording of, I think it was I'm about to say Lord of All Fevers and Plague, which is going to show up immense amounts of falseness. It wasn't Lord of All Fevers and Plague. It was hold on, what is that fucking song called? Lord of the Depths. I take that back. A Lost Forgotten Sad Spirit. If you liked the re-recording of A Lost Forgotten Sad Spirit, you are going to fucking flip over A Lengthening Shadow, because, like I said, it's got that same meditative vibe that song has got. It's dark, it's grim, it's atmospheric. The riffs are fucking solid from start to finish, and the vocals are done in the same kind of sinister whisper that Varg did on that re-recording. But great stuff, and as I said, I cannot be more pleased to see Raz step up and do what, in my opinion, is probably one of the black metal debuts of 2021. I'm going to play a track for you off it right now. This is a song called Possessor of the Golden Sickle.
I can see through the shadows on a wall. We are fools to believe that this is all. Possessor of the golden sickle, mirror of the tools of divination. Possessor of the golden sickle, mirror of the tools of divination.
Why purge myself of all earthly connections, abandoning my desires of the flesh, of personal gain, wealth, reputation, and comfort? Why connect to the void, passing through the portal open by the movement from life to death? And in this moment there is freedom and there is knowledge. The altar is everywhere. The altar is all things, and all is connected, like the roots of the earth, reaching down to the center. I stretch myself out to bathe in the radiance of truth, freed by my own hand, and no longer constrained or bound to this world.
Possessor of the Golden Sickle by Defod off the record, The Lengthening Shadow. It is available on Cavernous Records. Once again, head over to the Defod Bandcamp. I'll post the link to it in the description of this podcast. And if you buy anything, then let Raz know that you heard of him on Into the Necrosphere. But yeah, great stuff. An absolutely fantastic record, in my opinion. Another fantastic record. Der Weg, Einer, Freiheit have brought out their new album, Nocturne. It's available on Season of Mist Records. It, of course, follows up Finstetter, which came out in 2017. And I will confess right at the very start of this podcast, Der Weg, Einer, Freiheit has always been a band that's kind of been on the cusp for me. I enjoyed parts of Finstetter. I enjoyed parts of Stella, which came out in 2015, but it has never been a band that I've wanted to kind of compulsively go back and listen to, if that makes sense. I've liked them. I've liked what they do, but they were just not a band that kind of were able to break into those upper echelons of a band where, you know, when you have those moments when you're looking at your phone and you go, okay, what do I listen to now? They're not one of the first bands that pop into your mind. That, however, has changed with Nocturne. Nocturne, for me, in a nutshell, takes everything that was great about those previous records, distills and concentrates it into very concentrated blasts of just phenomenal Germanic black metal, but then breaks it up with moments of just extraordinary experimentation, which this band pulls off like the seasoned pros that they are. A great example of that being Immortal, which is the second single released off the record, that has that kind of Madrugada-esque intro that I think I spoke about on the news segment a couple of weeks ago. The fact that it kind of breaks up the record, or at least it sort of, disrupts in the best possible way the pacing of the record, means that all of those black metal songs, like Morgan, Am Rande der Dunkelheit, even Monument, which was, I think, the first single, it means those songs sound that much stronger and that much better because they kind of have these moments of, the band going into totally new, different tangents to anything that they've done before. They have that to kind of contrast against, and probably the biggest contrast on the record versus some of the aggressive black metal of the found elsewhere on the album is the closing song Haven, which would not be completely out of place on a Tom York or a Radiohead record. And I actually spoke to Nikita about that, and he was very open with saying that there's a pretty strong Tom York influence on that song. But again, an absolutely beautiful, atmospheric, and just perfect way to close off a record like this. The fact that they recorded this record live, I think, really comes through in how it sounds. This record sounds a lot more energetic, and a lot more together than previous records that they've put out. And I think truly, this is their coming of age. I will tell you for sure, those of you that may have looked at that album cover, which does, look a bit strange, but not quite as cult or necro as some of the stuff you'll find on the show. But those that might have looked at that and thought this band is going the way of Death Heaven, do not worry about that at all. I mean, for the most part, this is still, top-notch atmospheric black metal, and there is nothing wimpy about it. But, the band have just shown off the fact that they have a lot more dimensions to their sound and to their music, and have put out the best thing they've ever released, in my opinion, by no small stretch of the imagination. Once again, something you're about to learn all about when I throw another track at you. This is off of Nocturne, and it's a song called Morgan. That was Morgan by Der Weg Einer Freiheit off of an album called Nocturne. That is available on Season of Mist. Go check it out. And if you like it, then make sure you check out next week's episode, because I'll have Nikita Nikita Comrade on the show. And we'll be talking about that album and a whole lot more. That is actually in the bank. So great conversation. He's a super interesting guy. And I think, whether you're a fan of the band or not, you will thoroughly enjoy that interview and that episode. Now, I kind of intimated that I was surprised by this Der Weg Einer Freiheit record. Another album that has fucking blown me away that I did not think was going to is Persona Non Grata, the 11th album by Exodus. Exodus, of course, the thrash metal legends. I actually saw Zetro the other day describe them as being thought of as has-beens and now legends, and that's kind of probably a good analogy of the path that this band has gone on. I will say I was a fan of the Rob Duke stuff. I really liked the Atrocity exhibition. I loved Shovelheaded Kill Machine. When Zetro came back, I wasn't overly excited about it because I again, may be in the minority here, but I didn't really like Tempo of the Damned. And Blood In, Blood Out, I thought was a okay record, but it lacked a certain something for me. And then in 2016, I saw this band play with Obituary and Prong at the Electric Ballroom in London, and they were so fucking good on stage. There was like this organized, bottled up chaos and craziness to everything that was going on stage. They did a lot more of the gang vocals. There was a lot more of an old school thrash hardcore crossover feel to them on stage. And I remember saying to the guy that was with me at the time, I was like, why on earth are they not able to translate this feeling that I'm getting from seeing them live now properly to a record? Well, the good news is that is precisely what they have done with Persona Non Grata. And actually, my first thought when I got up to the fourth track, Elitist, which I'm going to be playing in a few minutes, was where in the fuck did these guys discover the Fountain of Youth, and when is old Jackson going to get a look in? Because these guys play on this album like they went back in time, taught their 20-year-old selves some new riffs and some new moves, and said, okay, well, now you go to the studio and you record this shit. Every single song on here is definitely not outside the purview of what you'd expect from Exodus. This is still old school riff-orientated thrash, but it is delivered with so much conviction and aggression and passion and just pure badassness that from start to finish, for me, this record just doesn't falter. It's fucking fantastic. And I think that modern metal be damned, I will go on record as saying these guys have stepped up alongside their label mates in Testament. And they have shown the Lamb of Gods, the Slipknots. I was going to say something horrible, but I'll save that for the new segment. But all of these bands that are kind of seen as, the newer wave of metal or the, modern American metal, they have shown all these fucking pretenders how shit gets done properly. And I would say this as well. I didn't think that an Exodus record would be a contender for my top 20 of 2021. But there is a very, very good chance this is going to feature, especially with the degree to which I've been addicted to listening to it. If you go to the gym and you want the closest thing to a course of steroids that you're going to be able to find in audio form, this is it. I'm going to play a track for you right now off of the record. This is called Elitist.
Condescending and absurd defender, cruel and callous when I know you are wrong. see no distant. Money to bow, slicing up the stiff neck and lifting the eyebrow, focusing on things I get for free. A pity and superior attitudes allow. Here comes another victim to blame. Ring on the bell to call the service. Bang on the gong to clean the mess up. Now I've used every friend I'd ever had, and it doesn't look like I'm stopping there. Antagonistic, money monger, passive sadistic, make you stronger, bad-faced and brassy, and flagrantly fucked, loud, ostentatious and crass, extensively so fancy, but soft to the touch, smile to your face when I pocket your cash, ring on the bell to call the service, bang on the gong to clean the mess up. Now I've used every friend I'd ever had, and it doesn't look like I'm stopping there. I'm an elitist. I'm an elitist.
Exodus with Elitist off of their new record Persona Non Grata. It's available right now on Nuclear Blast. Some may like this, some may not, but for my money, like I said, this has been one of the most pleasant surprises of the year. I absolutely love it. And those that don't like it, maybe listening to Corey Taylor running around half Kid Rock rapping with his fucking CT championship belt, maybe that's for them. It's not for me. I'll listen to music made by real men. And these dudes in Exodus have proven that, even in their 50s, they still have more testosterone than the vast majority of the younger generation combined. So great stuff there by them. And who knows? Maybe I'll have one of the Exodus men on the show at some point. Time now to change gears. And if you are easily triggered or easily offended, maybe now is the time for you to switch off the podcast, because I'm about to head over to Metal Storm and talk about the latest metal news headlines. First up, Altar of Oblivion are streaming a previously unreleased song. Danish Doom Lords Altar of Oblivion are pleased to share a previously unreleased song called The Night They Came. The latter was planned to be part of the group's unreleased album In the Cesspit of Divine Decay, meant to be released in 2015. Doom is sure as shit having a fucking comeback of note. I don't think there's a week that goes by when there's not at least 3 or 4 Doom bands releasing new stuff. And I've heard some really cool stuff in the Doom scene. A certain gentleman of a certain band who has been on this podcast in the last 20 or so episodes, I believe it is, played me his Doom project the other day, and it's pretty goddamn good. Hold the phone, everybody. Custard have released a new single, or revealed a new single. On December 3rd, German power metal outfit Custard will release their 7th full-length album, Imperium Rapax. I reckon you could basically be playing Dark Throne's Hate Them, and if you're on stage and you finish off with Rust, or you can finish off with Freezing Moon, and if at the end of that song you go, "What's up, motherfuckers? We are Custard," people are going to look at you and go, Yeah, music's good, but I'm not so sure I can be down with these clowns. I mean, who the fuck thinks up a name that atrocious for their band? And I mean, I have heard the music; it's equally atrocious. But good lord, anything but that shit. Stormkeep put out video for a journey through storms. This was released this weekend, actually, but I've not had a chance to listen to it yet on account of all the other stuff that came out. I will listen to it, though, and give you all my thoughts. I think it came out on Van Records as well, which, that equals an instant listen, in my opinion. But it says here, American black metalers Stormkeep have just put out their sophomore record, Tales of Other Time. Below you can check out a brand new music video for one of the album tracks, A Journey Through Storms. I think the Bangers and Mosh podcast guys highlighted this as one of their records of the month. So it's certainly getting some attention, put it to you that way. And also shout out to the Bangers and Mosh guys. They have shared my shit and said some very nice things about the podcast on Twitter many times. So kudos to them. And if you were looking for some more metal goodness in the podcast realm, then you could do much worse than to check them out. Corpse Grinder debut solo album on the way. This was some interesting stuff. Legendary Cannibal Corpse frontman George Corpse Grinder Fisher announced his debut album Corpse Grinder to hit the streets on February 4th via Perseverance Music Group. Corpse Grinder comments, when Jamie, that is Jamie Jaster of Hatebreed fame, approached me to do this record, I was fired up to get in the studio with Eric Rattan and record the vocals. It's a mix of death metal, thrash, and hardcore, and it sounds heavy as hell. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait for the world to hear it. I did listen to this preview clip, and that was, I must confess, really good, really, really entertaining. And it seems to me like Perseverance Music is this vehicle that Jamie's going to use now to record legends or folks in Dee Snider's case who are well past their prime, and then put out their records on that. And I think it's a very good idea. Like I said, I would love for him to do something with Blackie Lawless of Wasp, for example. And there's quite a fair few other folks that you could pull into that sphere. But either way, that's going to be a good record, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. Here's something that's also pretty interesting. I don't know how many of you noticed, but apparently Marcus Steiger of, I think his surname is Steiger, of Nuclear Blast fame, sold up and went and started up a new record label called Atomic Fire. Interestingly enough. So Atomic Fire are also signing up a lot of bands, and what I had read, I think, from the press release, was that they were going to be putting out Opeth, Meshuggah, and a bunch of others, including Mystic Circle. Says here earlier this week, reunited German black death metalers Mystic Circle announced their signing to Atomic Fire Records. Now the duo have finally unveiled the first single off their self-titled comeback record, set for release on February 4th, 2022. It was produced by the band and Nils Lesser at Vault Room Productions. The cover artwork was designed by Brazilian artist Rafael Tavares. I don't care so much about Mystic Circle. I saw them. They were one of those bands that used to open for fucking every other band back in the day. I remember them opening for I think Deerside and Acrococker. That was the infamous show where Deerside didn't show up, and I thought that Mystic Circle was abysmal. Absolutely one of the worst things I'd ever seen in my life. Very, very interesting news about Marcus opening up this new label, and good on him. He obviously made a decent amount of money selling Nuclear Blast. He's probably learned a few tricks. And if there's more avenues for great bands to get their shit out and to a bigger audience, kudos, great news. Special message to Marcus. If you would like somebody to do your A&R free of charge, I have got at least 8 to 10 bands that I think you could sign today and do really well with. Says here, Exodus stream new lyric video coinciding with the release of their new record, Persona Non Grata. Exodus put out a new lyric video for the track Prescribing Horror. I am very curious to know that track in particular, so I actually should have probably mentioned it on the review. But that's one that's a little different, a little darker. It's got a bit of a Slayer vibe to it, and I was wondering, listening to it for the first time, whether that wasn't Gary Holt whether it wasn't a track, I should say, that Gary had written for Slayer that was never used. Because you can even imagine, as you hear the album, or hear the song, You can imagine Tom singing that. And actually, it would have been quite cool if they had Tom do, you know, just a little splash of guest vocals on the new Exodus record. But I mean, as it is, like I said, it's fucking brilliant. Let's move on. Fetal Blood Eagle unleash Hate Fucked Face single. So this is also a fucking terrible band name, but it's pretty funny. Hate Fucked Face is a brand new preview tune from Fetal Blood Eagle's forthcoming debut, Indoctrinate. Another thing, I don't know how you want to get taken seriously with a fucking stupid-ass name like that, but it's certainly better than that other shite, Custard. Cynic debut new track. In 1 week, Cynic will put out a highly anticipated new full-length Ascension Codes via Season of Mist. The band is now sharing the newest single in a multiverse where atoms sing, and it's available for streaming in the form of a drum playthrough video performed by Matt Lynch. I listened to the song. It sounds to me like cheerful Devin Townsend, and I don't like it. I don't like cheerful music, period. So that's why I've always... I can take or leave Cynic. There's moments where I've listened to them where I've thought this is great. There's many more moments, especially as I get older, where I think happiness, cheer, joy, none of that belongs in heavy music. It's all about being fucking badass and evil and grim. So I am not as excited about that album as many others. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, it's not really shown up on any top 20s that I've seen so far. I saw Decibel was itching like a fucking sailor fresh from shore leave to get out their top 20 of 2021, and the list of bands on there was mostly fucking moribund. As a matter of fact, let's take a quick side detour and check it out, because like I said, most of it I was not keen on. And actually, I take back what I said. It's not the top 20 of 2021. It's their top 40. So number 40, Rivers of Nile, The Work, utter shit. Number 39, Dark Throne, Eternal Fails. I tried listening to it again the other day, and I know I spoke a bit to Mikael about it as well on this episode. There are songs that I think are very good, but fuck, man, yeah, it just, when you compare it to the best this band has been, not where it ought to be. Frozen Soul, no. Mara Cognitum, no. Silver Talon, no. Spectral Wound, A Diabotic Thirst. I think I reviewed that on the podcast. I like that, but I don't like the guy's vocals very much. I actually listened to it 2 days ago in the car, and I don't like vocals where the guy is just doing like a fucking tunnel scream for the whole of the album. I mean, there's no variation to it. It you know, again, the album's got great riffs, but the dude's vocals are fucking crap. The Ruins of Beverast, The Tool Grimoire. This album has dropped off my radar to such a degree that when I saw this list, I actually was reminded of the fact that Ruins of Beverast put out a new album this year, which I know many of you will be shocked about, you know, given how much I love Exuvia and how much I've spoken about it on this show. But anyway, that is just not a record that made a shred of an impression on me. Enforced, Killgrid, like that very much. Null, Interstice, don't know that. Arcspire, Bleed the Future. This was an interesting one. I don't really like technical death metal very much. As a matter of fact, generally speaking, if I see tech death anywhere in the description, I immediately move on to the next thing. But my buddy Errol got me to listen to this record, and it is actually not bad. It's I'll put it this way: it's interesting. Will I go back and listen to it over and over again? I'm not so sure about that. Dungeon Serpent, not familiar. Exodus, Persona non grata, I've already spoken about that. Holder, I know this Hortslustering record that Holder put out is a huge favorite of Mark's Metal Minute. Again, a record that I've listened to and I like to a degree, but I don't know, it's just not done the same for me as a lot of other records this year. Craven Idol, don't know. Deaf Heaven, Infinite Granite. Satan give me strength. This is such a fucking load of shit. And honestly, if you listen to that crap and then people turn around and want to rag on me for some Depeche Mode or some Radiohead, you can fuck right off. I mean, there's more fucking testosterone in Depeche Mode than there is in Def Evan. And testosterone is not the be-all and end-all. I kind of use that more jokingly than anything else. But this is just not a good album. I don't like it. And what I especially don't like are their dweeb fans on social media that act as though daring to say anything bad about them means you just don't understand, man. Fuck you. Rudimentary Penny, The Great War, it's pretty decent. Stormkeep, Tales of Other Time, I mentioned that earlier. Need to pay some attention to that record. I've not had the time to do so yet. Genghis Tron, Dream Weapon, not really listened to it. Gate Creeper, An Unexpected Reality, not bad. Definitely not a top 40 contender in my opinion. Cannibal Corpse, Violence Unimagined, very good record. Probably the best thing Cannibal Corpse has done for quite some time. I'm iffy on whether this is a strong enough contender to crack that old top 20 of mine. Worm, Foreverglade, all right. Unto Others, Strength, some of the most overrated shit that I've ever heard. Full of Hell, Garden of Burning Apparitions, another massively overrated band, and I know many will disagree with me on that. I've tried many, many times to get into them. I cannot. Cerebral Rot, Excretion of Mortality, not listened to it yet. Amon Ra, De Doorn, not bad. I keep referencing various people here, but my brother Evan of Quell, he's a big fan of this. And I will say, it is good. Again, is it a contender? I don't think so. Lingua Ignota, I haven't listened to it. The Silver Ward of Roses, that I did listen to, and that is pretty good. Skepticism, Companion, not particularly good in my opinion. Fucked Up, Year of the Horse, bullshit, overrated crap. Wolves in the Throne Room, Primordial Arcana, I did really, really like this, and I will waver a guess that it's going to be on my top 20 as well. Iron Maiden, Senjutsu, enjoyed it, won't be on my top 20. Lamp of Momo, Submission and Slavery, muck. Absolute overrated muck. Converge, Blood Moon 1, not listened to it yet, but I do really like Converge, and I like Chelsea Wolf, so one I do need to spend some time with. And again, this is why I'm waiting rather than fucking squeezing out the list just so I can be one of the first to do it. I want to give these records some time. Hooded Menace, The Tritonus Bell, like it, but I will forever connect this record to when I had COVID, and I felt so fucking atrocious throughout that experience that anytime I listen to Hooded Menace or this record, I keep thinking back to that. I know it's a good album, but like I said, that puts me off the album. What I will say is that the Wasp cover at the end of the album is inspired. Panopticon, and again Into the Light, not bad, but again I feel like Panopticon is a little like Tribulation, which they have at number 3, which is both, in my view, overrated. But they save the most overrated shite for number 1. Before we get to number 1, number 2 is Chemist, Deceiver, not too bad. But Carcass, Torn Arteries, number 1. How the fuck do you like that album so much that you would make it number 1? I don't know. I'm not Carcass's target demographic, clearly. I don't like the twin guitar harmonies and the fucking, just the, like, for me, I'd read on a couple of reviews that they were talking about Carcass as having gone back to their grind roots. I mean, this to me is it's less heavy than Swan Song. It's just a fucking boring, dull piece of shit record. There's nothing special to it whatsoever. There's a bunch of bands that have put out fucking demos this year that I think are way better. You can give me the Trivax demo 1 billion times over over Carcass. But anyway, so now you're getting a flavor for what that top 20 of 21 is going to be like. And like I said, if all goes to plan, then next year I'll kick off the year with those episodes. Kelly T from Slaves to the Underground podcast, she'll be on one. And my man Mike Hill will be on another. And shout out to Mike. I know he's had COVID. Apparently, his intense gaze frightened the COVID away. So he's not feeling too bad. But like I said, I myself, having had it, knows that it fucking sucks. But it'll be cool to talk to him anyway. And like I said, shout out to him. Hope he's doing well. Let's turn to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Disturbed's David Raymond. What we can learn from the Astroworld Festival debacle. Hurrah! More fucking preaching by another absolute numbskull. Megadeth's new album, The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead, to be released in the spring. What an imaginative title. I will say this though, showing up my own hypocrisy, I will definitely listen to this album when it comes out, just to hear what it sounds like. Do I have much hope for it? I don't know. I mean, I also tease and joke an awful lot about Dave Ellefson, but I do kind of feel like this band did him dirty. And as I've said many times, I just think that Dave Mustaine is a fucking moron. He's obviously he's a moron, but he's also a deadly martial arts fighter. So I can only hope that on this next article, where you can watch members of Megadeth train jiu-jitsu before the final show of the metal tour of the year, I can only hope that in keeping with Dave's many references to it in his autobiography, the teachings of his sensei sprang into his mind right before he dealt the killing blow, or in this case, the killing choke. Man, I don't know why somebody didn't stop him from releasing that garbage, but it was one of the most unintentionally hilarious biographies I've ever read by anybody, and it is so devoid of any kind of self-awareness. It's unbelievable. And I'm a big fan of biographies. I think probably the best one I've read was the Slash biography. This old Diamond Dave's biography, not so good. Another one, Puddle of Mud's Wes Scantlin walks off stage mid-concert after complaining about blinding lights. Fuck you, motherfucker. I bet he showed that lighting guy with those cruel and vile words. Aaron Lewis says he beat COVID-19 after taking ivermectin. And then I love how Blabbermouth basically live up to their reputation as the CNN of the CNN of metal news or music news. They put they go, after taking ivermectin, comma, a drug unproven for coronavirus treatment. I don't know whether any of you guys saw the absolutely glorious takedown of Sanjay Gupta by Joe Rogan on his podcast. I thought that for the most part the conversation was, very respectful, and Sanjay didn't seem like too bad a guy. But when Joe had him on the ropes and caught him out in a lie, he was fucking all over that dude like stink on a monkey. This ivermectin business, the fact that it just proves, right, that the media at the moment can lie, and people's response, because their responses are dictated entirely by emotions. The initial response is so visceral. It doesn't matter what comes out afterwards. They're already in a fucking flat panic and in a state about what they've heard the first time. So whatever comes out to contradict what has been said, whether true or untrue, it just doesn't get through the fucking rat's nest they have created in their own minds. But it says here, Stained frontman Aaron Lewis has opened up about his recent COVID-19 diagnosis, saying that he beat the virus by taking ivermectin, a drug with no evidence of being safe or effective treatment for COVID-19. He also said that he used Z-Pak, an antibiotic used to treat bacterial infections by inhibiting the growth of bacteria in the body. I mean, I don't know about ivermectin in his case, but I know that Rogan got it prescribed by a doctor. It is not just a fucking horse dewormer. It is a miracle drug which has won the I think it was the Nobel Prize for the creator back in 2015. It was used or is widely used in India, from my understanding. And the fact that I think the recent statistics that I read said that Scotland now has a higher number of people who are vaccinated and infected with COVID-19 than are unvaccinated and infected. just says to me that all of these fucking, pseudo medical experts that float around online and scream and yell at people about taking, about having to take the vaccine like they know shit, can also fuck right off. I have the first shot. I'm definitely getting the second shot. I want to be able to fly, but I have very, very grave misgivings about something where it was sold to us as something that would, help us get back to normal. Then boosters came in. Then they started strong-arming people into getting vaccinated. I don't believe in any of that shit. And equally, I think when people who don't know any better start to get political about shit like, what a doctor prescribes to you, I think it's fucking idiotic. What else is there to talk about on here? Axl Rose thanks his fans for tributes after the death of his pet cat Dexter. My heart goes out to old Axl. My cat is 13 years old, and fortunately, I think because she more or less lives off a natural diet. It's going to sound like I starve her, but because she tends to murder things like a fucking psychopath on the horse yard where we live. She's pretty sprightly for a cat her age, and hopefully she'll be around for a long, long time. I'm trying to train her to slice the throats of my enemies with her little nails, but so she's a bit lazy for that. Marilyn Manson sells Hollywood Hills home for $1.835 million. I'm surprised that he's only living in such a small place. I mean, I know. 1.835 million isn't something that just anybody digs out of the old underwear drawer, but it's only a 3-bedroom home in the Hollywood Hills. And I thought he would be a lot richer than that. But I guess all that hush money and all the money that he has to spend on a 8-ball a day habit of the old snow ends up costing him a fair bit. I saw there was another article that Rolling Stone magazine released on him about the so-called bad girl room, which I think used to be a vocal booth that was completely soundproof that he used to lock naughty, disobedient girlfriends up in. I mean, it is so fucked up, it's beyond the pale. But I don't understand why anybody is surprised. I mean, this guy had the worst reputation in the industry for, backstage antics, drugs. I mean, there's video of him pissing on fans. I mean, forget Sophie from Brass Against. I mean, this dude was doing it fucking ages ago. He was getting up to all sorts of shenanigans, more or less told you in his lyrics, he's a deviant fucking lunatic, psychotic, unhinged nutcase. And then all these girls, I mean, surely there must have been rumors, there must have been stories about some of the stuff that he had done, and yet everybody, is fascinated by the broken, dark. He's so dark and broken and mysterious, so they all get with him, and then they shocked that he's a fucking asshole. And I'm not saying anyone deserved it, not whatsoever. No one deserves to be treated like he reportedly treated these people, but like I said before, I think when I see stories like this, I think about it in terms of what wisdom will I impart to my daughter, and the wisdom that I'll impart to my daughter is if you bring a fucking idiot like that to my house, he'd better be immune to a lead salad. Right, is there anything else? Biohazard's Billy Graziade to release new Billy Bio album, Leaders and Liars. I might check that out, although I have not much hope for it. I so desperately wish that Evan Seinfeld didn't turn into such a complete and utter buffoon. I don't know whether you guys saw, but he has now blacked out all of his tattoos virtually. He just looks like a total imbecile. And then you think to yourself, this guy used to be the dude that, when he got on stage, in the mid-90s and they did Wrong Side of the Tracks, people would go ballistic. I mean, they're the band that got me out of mosh retirement a couple of times just because of how incredible they are on stage. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess people change as the years drag on. I think I'm more or less at the end of the news for this week. I did want to mention one thing, however. There is nothing worse, or the only thing worse, let me say, than bending your knee to the mob is to try and placate the mob with empty, vapid gestures as one or as a certain English festival promoter is currently doing. So this festival promoter, let's call her Vicky, got into a spot of bother with some people that she made a few insensitive jokes about. She issued a groveling apology, but since then has now on her social media just been posting these weird cryptic messages. And you all know what it's in reference to, but these very insipid messages where it'll be like a cartoon heart, and then it just says love. And then a couple of days later, there'll be another one where it's a fucking rabbit walking up a pathway and it says one step at a time. So I don't know whether she's in some sort of PC rehab now and they're teaching her all about how not to make jokes that offend anybody. But, you know, in my opinion, she made a couple of dumb, insensitive comments. She apologized for it. That's enough. And I think, frankly, she's going to, in the long run, come to learn that she's doing more harm to her own self-image and her own brand and Bloodstock's brand, frankly, by catering to these fucking idiots than she would have done by just saying, I apologized, end of story. That's how, I mean, frankly, is that not how adults deal with a problem? You make a mistake, you put your hands up, you say, I was wrong, I won't do it again. And that's the end of it. You know, this isn't something where people died or where something completely egregious happened. This was a joke. So let's get some perspective here. But I think perspective is something that's out the window here. And part of why I say this, this is going to do more damage to her in the long run. The people who she offended, you can go online right now and they're still up in arms and still calling her every name under the sun and still saying, you know, that the festival itself needs to be cancelled, and I mean, basically wishing every sort of ill under the sun on her. And it comes back to, what some people have, or the parallels that some people have drawn to the Chinese struggle sessions back in the Chinese Revolution in the late 1960s. They would bring these people up on stages where they would, be forced to apologize for whatever terrible thing that they did. They'd be beaten with sticks, insulted, shouted at. And at the end of the day, those people were still hung, or they were still shot, or they were still killed. Nothing is ever good enough for the mob. I hope that I will avoid their ire at some point. And, frankly, again, I'm careful enough with my words. I hope that, people won't believe that I am literally trying to do a violence to them. But, in this person's case, I really do hope that at some point she realizes that, you have to have a red line at some point and go, look, I'm sorry that I said it, but if you're not going to accept my apology, then, you're clearly not interested in any sort of reconciliation or forgiveness. And maybe it's time for you to get bent. And on that note, folks, I am done with the news for this week. The brilliant news, of course, is that I will be back again next week. And as I said, I'll have Nikita Comrade from Der Weg, Einer, Freiheit on the show with me. And we'll be talking about Nocturne, which I reviewed earlier on in the show. Do make sure that you check out all of the cool shit that I featured on episode 106 of Into the Necrosphere, be it Vredensdal's Silence is Eternal, be it Exodus, Persona Non Grata, or be it the new Defod record, The Lengthening Shadow. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much to everybody for sticking around to the very end of the podcast. To my friends in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. And to the folks in Wisconsin who had anybody affected by this fucking scumbag who drove his SUV into a crowd of people at a parade. When I'm recording this last night, my heart goes out to all of you, and I do hope that the driver of that car dies of diarrhea. I literally want him to shit himself to death. But to all of you, stay safe, stay healthy. I once again just want to stress to everybody how much I appreciate the support that I get for this podcast and the fact that you guys keep tuning in and week out. I will keep doing my absolute best to put out the best possible podcast that I can do for all of you. I've spoken about the song that I'm about to play out many, many times on the podcast recently. Some would even call me somewhat obsessed with this album. The album is Battles in the North, the band is Immortal, and the song is Battles in the North. And on that note, I'm going to see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.
kings of the Raven Realm.